Well, good evening. Welcome to the Sportsman Rugby League for the last tackle, as ever, on your Wednesday evening. We are officially in September, which means we are in what they call the run-in, the business end of the Betfred Super League season. Old Trafford just starting to loom slightly larger on the horizon, and a big few weeks on the way. In the studio with me this week, Kevin Brown, Paul Sculthorpe. Gents, pleasure as ever to have you with us. It's an exciting time of year, this, Kev. 6 weeks until we crown the champions. Plenty to do in between in terms of playoffs, the full picture. Final hurdles for some teams, it's last chance saloon for others. What's this time of year like for a player?
Depends where you sit, really. If you sat at the top and you're almost hoping that your body gets through and you can play in them big games, for some players, playoffs have already started. It is almost knockout football for them, but it's the business end. It's what you do all your training for in pre-season. It's when you get excited, the crowds start getting bigger, and the excitement starts. So it's the best part of the season, and this season's probably been the best build up to it and the closest with that top six as I've seen for a long time.
Is this when you find yourself almost missing it, Scully, when you think about these big games coming up and these big weeks?
I think it is, because like you say, it's knockout football. It's like cup rugby. You go to these finals, and that's as an ex-player, they're the games that you miss, isn't it? And as Kev says, it's just the intensity now. There's a couple of teams playing for first. There's a couple of teams trying to get into the six. Nobody wants to finish bottom. I think there's everything to play for, and this season has been probably the best for that.
I think one of the interesting things of it is there's a few teams this year in kind of almost uncharted territory. When you look at KR at the top, they've been solid for the last few years, but they've not been at the summit. Saints, that's almost a bit on the other foot, isn't it? They've been at the top for so long, all of a sudden they find themselves in a dogfight. Warrington, after a dire couple of years, kind of back amongst it. There's a few teams in there who aren't probably used to where they are at the moment.
And Leeds and Lee as well. I think if you look at them, their season was almost wrote off 2 or 3 months ago. But on the back of Brad Arthur coming in and getting some players back at Lee for Adrian Lamb, they've had a resurgence, haven't they, both sides? So they're a danger for everyone. I think Saints will just be okay because of the point difference that they've got, but by no doubt they need to win some games to get some momentum, because I watched them at the weekend. They were poor again. They got the win, but I thought they were poor on in terms of Saints standards.
When you look at the bigger picture, Scully, that top two probably looks like it's locked in now. Wigan and KR, the gap's 4 points, but below that, Warrington safely in the playoffs, probably safely in the top four, and then you've got 6 teams playing essentially for 3 spots. And look, drama is what you want as supporters, and that's absolutely what we're going to get in the next 3 weeks.
Yeah, of course it is, and I think Warrington are secured third. To be honest, truth be told, and the competition then is for the rest who can get in that, and certainly get in the top 6. You want a top 4 if you're Saints. You want your home semi-final. But it's all to play for, and it's as Kev said, I think the playoffs have started already for a lot of clubs.
Yeah, those home semi-finals, they add that kind of extra layer of jeopardy, don't they, to this time of year. But mention Warrington, I think Scotty's right, top 3 is where they're going to end up, but that defeat to Lee, how important is it at this stage? Sam Burgess not happy after the game with a few things. He said a few things this week about injuries and loop fixtures and suspensions, but it's a big week this for them, isn't it, in terms of putting that behind them, because they do have a history, Warrington, of being very up and down.
Yeah, and you could sense the frustration. That was the most frustrating and unhappy I've ever seen Sam. Clearly unhappy with the sending off, but I actually thought it was a sending off. He's hit him in the face. It's a difficult one, and there's no malice, but when you look at the rules now, you can't do it. So it's really important that they get back playing the brand they can. But without Matt Duffy, I fear for him. I think they've had a confidence blip. Their attack isn't as good as it was. So moving into these big games, they obviously go to Saints this weekend. They need a big win and a big performance, not only to keep Sam happy, but to to have that confidence with a team that they can win without Matt Duffy.
I think that's a big thing as well. You want to go into these playoffs on good form. You want to go into knockout football playing your best rugby, not doubting your own confidence. And I think that's probably where Warrington are at the moment after the defeat to Lee.
We mentioned kind of teams in uncharted territory. Hull KR at the top. They don't look like they're in uncharted territory, do they? They look so comfortable at the top of the league, and making pretty light work of Salford again at the weekend. And they just look like a team week in, week out that expects to win now.
Yeah, and their attack and the variation of attack. I think I used to look at Mikey Lewis and think he was just a bit of a maverick where he ran for himself, but he's much more than that now. He's leading the assists, he's kicking the game, and he's organising the team as well. So you throw in Peter Iku and Niall Evalds and Joe Burgess, they're all playing career best football at the moment. So sometimes when you see the top of the league at this stage, it doesn't always show who's the best in form, but I think Hull KR are the best form team at the minute. They go to Wigan, I think it's going to be the best game of the season. Two teams that have still got a chance of winning silverware, and for Hull KR, I don't know when it was that they last won the league, but it was a long time before us, Lewis. I think Scully might remember.
Not at all. But I've written three different names down here, Minchella, Whitbread and Tanganoa, who I think have all been outstanding as well. You look at talk about the strike players, but you look at their pack as well. They just competed for everything. The fit, the
balance is great.
The balance is great, and they can all play. But I like the way they play direct. They play with variation, and there's nothing better than confidence as well. And the way that they're going, they're 8 in a row now, and what a way to go into the playoffs.
And they're a lot of fun as well. I mean, you mentioned Mikey Lewis. He's an absolute joy to watch as a neutral. He's a bit of a pantomime villain. He's a bit of a maverick. Clearly knows how to get his team around the park. But they are kind of this season's entertainers.
And you look at the best scrum halves ever in our game, and that's the kind of players that they are. They direct play, but they do get under your skin as well. And he's doing that, but he's backing it up with his football.
And Tyrone Mays, he's fallen into that role of being on the ball and being a foil and letting Mikey run round and do his thing. I think it's probably the first time he's played that role, because he's normally that maverick type of player. He was at Catalans, he was at Penrith, and now he's come over here to Hull KR, and he's playing a real balanced style for Mikey.
Hull KR, well at the top, we'll obviously talk about that massive game coming up a little bit later in the show. Wigan come into it off the back of a win against Catalans. Scully, they had to do it the hard way. It wasn't easy work for them. It very rarely is in the south of France, but a really good sparring session from a Wigan perspective in terms of what's coming out.
Probably, like you said, just to get the win and show that what Wigan can grind out, and that's what they're known for, is the resilience that Wigan show, year in, year out. I don't think they've been playing well at all, in probably the last month or so. But they can grind wins out, and that's all you need at this time of year. Get in the right position, work on your form, and then, hit the straps come knockout football.
And they're going to get that week off, whether they finish first or second. Matty Pete might almost be saying to his players, let's just get through to that point, keep winning games, keep knocking these results off, have the break, regroup, and then go again for 2 last games.
Well, they're well versed at it, aren't they? They've got the experience of being around big games, peaking and then coming off the throttle, so to speak. I think the fact that they've already got 2 trophies in the bag helps things. They'll trust each other, they'll trust the process, they'll be getting ready. There'll be no dip in the toe in though this weekend. Make no mistake about it, they want to win the league leaders. That is a big trophy. There's only a couple left and they want to get that. So I expect a much better Bevan French. I thought he was quite poor at the weekend. But we know when he's on form, he's unplayable. I think the fact that he's in there, he's already had a game under his belt, they'll see this as a big game and they'll want to challenge, not only for the League Leaders Shield, but to knock Hull KR down a peg or two, confidence-wise, for what's around the corner.
And Catalans, they're one of those teams that find themselves in hot water that they've probably not been used to in the last few years, and they are doing it tough in terms of the players that they've got available and injuries, but they find themselves in a very precarious position just to make the 6.
Yeah, they do. It's a massive game for them. This week against Salford, and Salford coming on the back of some good performances. Catalan, they just need to turn that around. Steve McNamara's made no bones about it, about the injuries that he's had, but that's part and parcel of the game. And if you want to make the 6, they've got to turn up, and they've got to turn up this week.
Kev, you mentioned it passing earlier. St Helens back in the winning circle, but you kind of mentioned the performance. Ultimately, they're probably in a similar position now. They've just got to keep knocking off the results and hope that the confidence and the form comes with it.
Yeah, and I think they'll get confidence from the win that should carry over this week and hopefully give them a better performance. They just needed to tick that one off. It looked like two teams that had won, 2 games out of 6, didn't it, at the weekend with Huddersfield and Saints. And I thought Johnny Lomax got more and more involved and he looked more like the player that we're used to seeing. I think once they start generating a bit more play the ball speed with Walmsley, Lees, and hopefully Morgan Knowles is fit, he limped off at the weekend. Once they start doing that, I think the players like Burns, who's coming and doing really well, and Lomax at the forefront, they will start getting better performances. But that confidence has definitely taken a hit. I think mentally, when you win so often and you win so many trophies, it can actually be a real tough point when it's not going well, and it can actually affect you much more than it would if you hadn't been through such a successful period.
That air of invincibility that was there for so long has gone, there's no doubt about it. Is it a confidence thing? Is it a thing of they just need the senior players to get around the squad and just lift them through this stage of the season?
I think it is it's a massive confidence thing as well, but that also comes with performances, and the performances have not been good enough. I think Saints are definitely going through a bit of a transition period. I think there's some of them older players, you look at Morgan Knowles, Alex Walmsley, Johnny Lomax, Tommy Makinson, they've missed a lot of games this year. They're an ageing group who've been part of that era, that won 4 in a row. And there's a lot of young players come in, but where I think they've struggled is that spine, is the kind of directional play. A lot was left to Johnny. I agree with Kev. I thought Johnny was a lot better at weekend. And you look at his first try, what Johnny does best is when he runs with the ball, and they probably give him a bit more responsibility on directing the team and get the kicking game, and I think they need to do that this week as well.
Moving on to Leeds, I'm very, very wary for obvious reasons about writing Leeds off at this stage of the season, because they have a habit of making people look foolish and putting runs in from deep in the table. That said, if they do make the 6 alone, it'll be by the skin of their teeth. A second Golden Point win against London in a season, it keeps them in the fight, but just.
Yeah, just, and 40 seconds to go, by the way, Brodie Croft knocked it over. It would have been a draw and probably seals the fate, and they're out of the 6. I spoke to Ian Blease this week, and I think they've got a fair bit of confidence behind them if they can get in. Not only for the fact that Leeds have done it before, but Ian Blease did it before at Salford, and it was a couple of years back when Jackson Hastings was there, and they won every game leading into the playoffs, and they almost had the perfect pre-playoff form. I think Leeds are doing the same. They're getting, even though they're only scraping through, they're getting that durability that they get from close contest. They're already getting weathered, so I do think they're a danger. Along with Lee, I think people will be looking down thinking, I hope they don't get in.
I think that is the kind of beauty of it, isn't it, from a neutral perspective, is that when we do eventually know who that 6 is, there's going to be a lot of teams in there that will make other teams nervous in a one-off game environment. Leeds have undoubtedly got something a little bit extra different around them since Brad Arthur's come in. You just have to question whether they can find the consistency essentially now over the space of 6 weeks to go the distance.
Yeah, I think we've definitely seen a difference since he's come in. But you look at the Leeds, it baffles me every year. Leeds, you look at their team sheet on paper and how they come up with some of the performances or the starts to the year that they do. They get in the mix, they get in the 6, then we know from previous with Leeds that they're capable of anything. And I agree with the Lee thing as well. I look to the Saints fixtures when you look at the 6 and where teams are likely to finish. I wouldn't want to go to Lee on the last game of the season away to get in the 6.
They're almost a form team in the comp, Lee. I think what if they lost 1 game in 10? Like, that's unheard of for not being in the 6.
Yeah.
So if they can get themselves in, they're a real danger for anyone.
It feels like a lot of clubs have had almost kind of mini seasons within the season, doesn't it, with patches of form and injuries. And it's going to be a fascinating run in these next 3 weeks as we look to kind of finalise that 6. Old Trafford on the horizon, as we've said, in the Betfred Super League. But in Betfred League 1, we've already seen silverware lifted as Oldham took their crown at the weekend.
Trevor Hunt, the Vice President of the Rugby Football League, awards the League One trophy to John Turner, who will celebrate with Chairman Bill Quinn and his teammates. As Oldham finally wonderful moment.
Sum up what this means.
So much. It's the first time in my career I've played for a club where there's a deep emotional connection. I'm so proud of what we've achieved. I know that people might say, "Oh, we've spent loads of money," but the thing is, I don't care how much money we've spent. I've got to lift a trophy with Oldham. That's something that I never thought I'd do in my career. So I can't tell you how happy I am.
And that moment when you lifted the trophy in front of a packed Joe Royal stand with every single age group wearing Oldham shirts and cheering you and your teammates, what was that like?
Well, it's just it's different. It's so different from what's happened to this club in the last 20 years. It's just this was unthinkable just like 18 months ago. It was unthinkable that had happened, and obviously don't know how many was here today, but we was in the different stands, and I've not seen that since the early 2000s at this ground. So yeah, deep sense of accomplishment, and yeah, I wish my late granddad was here to see it, but it's one of them things. It's a bit of a bittersweet moment, if I'm being honest with you. A bit emotional, bit hollow, but I'm happy, man.
Yeah, congratulations to Oldham back in the Betfred Championship for 2025. Scully, you're an Oldham lad, of course, and great to see a famous old club that have seemingly turned things around off the field, reaping the rewards on the field and on their way back up the pyramid.
Yeah, it's brilliant to see. You know, obviously, I say I'm an Oldham boy, Oldham, fan growing up, and used to ball boy at Watershed. So great to see the club, getting back to where it deserves, and got a big shout to Mike Ford and what he's done there, Bill Quinn. Kieran O'Reilly on the commercial side, as you say, they've built the club the right way, and it's bearing fruit on the field where it matters. They're growing that, but they're also growing the support and the community in the background.
Kev, there'll be a lot said in the months and years to follow about the structure outside of Super League and what it should look like, but undoubtedly, there's a club here with an opportunity in Oldham to go all the way and get themselves back to former glories, and ultimately I'm not saying in the next 12, 18 months, but they can point at Super League and say, we've got ambitions to be there.
Yeah, and when I speak with Mike Ford, he genuinely cares about the town of Oldham and making sure that the kids want to play for Oldham. That's his driver. Bill Quinn's putting the money in, and he's exactly the same. So they're not just going, let's get a good first team and have 20 players and build it off that. They're trying to do everything. Like Scully says, the commercial side, they're getting, I think they had nearly 3,000 there in a League One game. That's a brilliant starting point, and I see them going a long way. I think the players that they're signing, the investment that they've put in, but the foundations, I think, is real key for them.
I think it's a Rugby League hotbed as well. You look at some of the amateur clubs that are in the town, and you look at players, across Super League that have come through and from Oldham. So, you want them players wanting to play for Oldham, and that's not been the case for the past 20, 30 years. But hopefully, in the future.
No, I was just going to say, I was there at Easter weekend when they played Rochdale at Boundary Park, and I think that was on the Sunday. The Saturday before, they'd had an amateur rugby league event where they'd had over 2,500 people in the building at Boundary Park. It is, as you say, one of those areas where amateur rugby league especially is very, very strong, and the potential to translate that into the professional game finally looks like it's been realised.
Yeah, definitely, and as I say, you want them players that the quality players that come through the amateur game in Oldham to stay in the town, or the ability to be able to try and attract these players, and they're certainly doing that. So as I said, big raps to Fordy and all the management team.
Yeah, congratulations to Oldham. Plenty still to be settled in League One, of course, at the playoffs and above. And keep your eyes peeled, because we will have confirmation of our end-of-season coverage very, very soon. Turn our attentions back to the Betfred Super League, and chances anyone place to start in terms of this week's game. Probably the game that decides where the League Leaders' Shield finishes up this season. Possibly a dress rehearsal for the grand final. Definitely at the moment the best two teams in the competition. Wigan Warriors against Hull KR, Kev, a proper mouth-watering game. Kind of like a playoff before the playoffs.
Yeah, I think, it's winner takes all, isn't it, for me? I think whoever wins this game gets the League Leaders' Shield. So I've not seen the town as excited since Penrith came to town and they filled the stadium. I think they'd already sold just short of 20,000 last Sunday. Everyone knows that the Hull KR are going to travel well. They'll pack that end as well. So in terms of excitement, fan appeal, it's all there. I think now it's just up to the lads on the field to produce, and I'm pretty confident they will. Whoever wins that comes out with the League Leaders' Shield, so why wouldn't they?
Hull KR have got a little bit of recent history of not turning up in big games, especially against Wigan. If you look at Challenge Cup and last season's playoffs, what will the talk around that camp be this week about not letting that happen again and making sure they stay in the game and give themselves as much chance as possible away from home? Because that's the big thing I think here, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest challenge for KR is doing it under pressure of a big game, and what a win on a Friday could bring. I think it's going to be a fabulous game, and I think Hull KR are the better side of the two, and certainly in form wise. What Wigan are, they're experienced in these big games and big moments, and the resilient that I spoke about earlier. And I think it's a game that I don't think you know what to expect until it happens.
Playing devil's advocate, Kev, is from a KR perspective, in a game this big, their biggest league game in a long time. I know they've been in cup finals, but he's been away from home in some respects to take the pressure off a little bit. We know how big rugby league is in Hull and what Craven Park can be like. Does almost being away from home, and does that take a little bit of the pressure off?
I think it almost makes them underdogs a little bit. I think if they were at home and it was a sellout at home, which it no doubt would be, I think it does add a little bit of pressure. But I feel under Willie Peters, he's good at bringing the best out of them under pressure. They've gone through a bit of a transition where they're not new to these big games. They've played in the Challenge Cup, obviously they lost that. They played in playoffs, it didn't quite go to plan. But I feel now that they're in a position where they've built the confidence up. They're there on merit. They're not there just because they're selling the crowds out. They're there because the team's doing the business, and I honestly feel that them players will travel up that M62 confident and will perform on the day. Will Wigan be good enough? I think if Bevan French puts a masterclass, they may just be, but it's going to be a very, very close contest if both bring the best.
Yeah, I think it's one of the key areas, Scully. Where's this one lost?
I think it's going to be a forward battle first. Whoever gets that wins that early arm wrestle, which you get in these games because the intensity of it. And then obviously whichever team create the most opportunities. Where for me, Hull KR, they're just so well versed across the board. That strike that we spoke about. Hiku, Burgess, Niall Levels. The halfbacks are playing well. Jez Litton for me is one of the best nines in the game. And the pack's mobile and tough, but as I said, it's Wigan for me are not on great form at the moment, but the ability to win. But I just think Bevan French with 80 minutes under his belt, what he brings to that Wigan side could be a completely different dynamic.
That's the key, isn't it? It's probably harder to look at Hull KR and see where the threats come in because they are so balanced across the park. Where Hull KR will go in, let's shut Bevan French down. I think that's the contrasting pre-match build-up.
Predictions?
I'm going to go for a Hull KR win. I just think on current form, they're the best team.
I think Wigan, I've just not seen them underperform on a big game for a long, long time. I think whenever it comes to the big dance, they show up. I think Wigan.
Split in the studio. I'm going to go for a draw. We'll move on. Friday, Leeds surely on the last of their 9 lives as far as the playoffs are concerned. But Hull FC, as we know, really struggling this season.
Yeah, I think it's a win for Leeds. Home advantage there. They've got everything to play for. Hull have nothing to play for. I just can't see past a Leeds win.
Hull FC play a few of these teams that are in the playoff mix over the next few weeks. Are they going to have a say at some point?
Well, they've got nothing to lose. I just thought they were poor against Castleford. That had been my worry, that they're going to Leeds. Leeds have got everything to play for, and Brad Arthur will be going, let's get some confidence in the lads here. He'll be leaving his team on if they can, stick 30 or 40 on. They've got that momentum going into the playoffs. I think it's the perfect fixture for Leeds rivals. If they want to do anything in the playoffs, they need to dismantle this Hull FC side.
Another game with top 6 implications. Lee Leopards, Castleford Tigers. You mentioned the form that Lee are in, Kev. Do you expect them to go here tails up and ultimately get a result?
I do. I think Lee are almost the best team in the competition at the minute, even though the league table doesn't suggest that. I think the fact that they've got all the best players back at the right time, we've seen it on the day they can beat anyone. So I can't see anything but a Lee win. They need that victory to get in the playoffs and stay in the playoffs. And I've no reason to think that they can't do that.
Scully?
Yeah, I totally agree. I just think Lee, what matters, in this game is what you do at the back end of the season, not what you do at the beginning. And Lee, as I said, they're up to fitness. They're playing well. They're confident, and I just can't see them slipping up at Castleford.
Moving on to Saturday, Scully, and a game that's got a very different feel to it after last weekend. Warrington against St Helens. Warrington need to bounce back. They're obviously going to be without Paul Vaughan and Matt Duffy, as we've spoken about. And St Helens, a few times this season we've said, have they turned the corner? But they will feel that this is an opportunity for them to get a big result and maybe get some confidence in them and get the wheels turning again.
Yeah, I think this could potentially turn Saints' season around in regards to that confidence. A good win at Warrington, wouldn't do you any harm going into the last 2 league games of the season and confirm a top 6 spot. So, Warrington they'll want to bounce back as you say, and I don't think they've much to lose in regards to league positions or points. I think third's pretty much secured for them. But they'll want to bounce back from that disappointing loss.
It's that form word again, isn't it, Kev?
Yeah, it is, and it's confidence again. I think if Saints start well, I think there'll be some doubts in the Warrington players' minds. Very similar to how Wigan were without Bevan French. Without Matt Duffy, I think they're a completely different side. You throw in the loss of Paul Vaughan as well this week. I think they're there for the taking, Warrington, at the moment, but Saints need to improve and make no mistake about that. I thought Sione Matautia played really well in the left centre for Saints, so I think that's an area that they can get some joy in, and I actually think they've got a real good chance over at Warrington this week.
Sorry, mate. I think Morgan Knowles and Sione Matautia have brought a different dynamic to that Saints team this week. Huddersfield, that win, just the intensity that they bring, and I think that's their experience as well. Just brought a bit more of an edge to Saints, and hopefully they can build on that this week. Also, Saturday evening, potentially the second biggest game of the weekend, really, when you look at what's at stake for both teams and playoff hopes, top 4 hopes. Salford Catalans. Interesting one, this, Kev. You'd make Salford favourites at home based on the run of both teams have been travelling in the last 6 games, but again, they're a team that are fighting for, both teams are fighting for their lives in the playoffs. Salford ultimately look in a strong position at the moment. Catalans a little bit like Leeds, probably running out of opportunities. I think it'll be nervy at times.
Salford need to win this for me. I think if they do lose this game, they're in danger of slipping out. When I've looked at the points difference, they could be in trouble if they lose this game. Catalans, I just think they're not attacking great at all. They have got a different spine and a different look to them. But attack-wise, I think Salford blow them off the park. If it's all-out attack, which Paul Rowley will want, Salford win this game. But I think Steve McNamara will be trying to make it slow. He'll be trying to make it grubby and getting into and under the skin of Salford. And if they can do that, Catalan can get the win. But I feel that the attack of Salford is just too good on the day.
Salford are enjoying their best home form of the Super League era this season. It's their last home game of the season. It feels like they're 1 win away from really kind of rubber stamping their place in the playoffs. They'll be really, really up for this one. Yeah, they will be. And they're a team I love watching, as you said, for that attack. They love to throw the ball about. And as Kev says, if they can get on the front foot and attack Catalan, who are lacking in confidence and performance at the moment, I think it's a Salford win. It is a must-win game, for both teams. Rounding off the weekend, maybe London's last chance to get themselves off the foot of the table this season. They travel to Huddersfield, but I have to admit, Kev, based on London's form and the way they've been looking in the last few weeks, I fancy them.
I back London on this one. I think it's a real dangerous game for Luke Robinson and his team. It's probably the first game that they've been actually the favourites since Robbo's took over. But yeah, you're right, London are playing particularly well. I went down there watching them against Warrington. They should have won that game. Arguably they should have won the game at the weekend against Leeds. But I think they go there confident. They've got nothing to lose and everything to gain by not having the wooden spoon if they win this game.
Nothing to lose, but it feels like they're a team playing with a point to prove, and that does make them dangerous in itself.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. I think London have been excellent. I just think you've got to give them so much credit for the fight that they've showed this year. I thought they were the best team at Magic, but Huddersfield, they've got to make a statement. They're not playing for anything in regards to league positions. They're out of the playoffs. Their season's over in 3 weeks, but they need to improve on what they've previously served up. And London is an opportunity for them to do that. I think if they don't, that's poor for Huddersfield.
What Mike Eccles has done there, like Scully says, they need to be, given a massive pat on the back, because he's kept them going, hasn't he? Like, there's so many reasons for him just to switch off and turn up this season, but they've got better and better towards the back.
Big week. really big week. Feels like we're going to learn a lot more about what that top six is going to look like come the end of this weekend. Gents, we've run out of time. It's been an absolute pleasure as always. Just one final point. I know it's cliche, I know we say it a lot, but what an end to the season we've got, Kev.
I can't remember an end of season like it where we've still got jeopardy at the bottom when no one thought there would be. London have caught up to Hull FC, so the wooden spoon's at stake. The top six is still wide open, and we still don't know who's going to win the League Leaders' Shield. So there's so much to play for. Like I say, I can't wait to buy my ticket and go to Wigan on Friday and watch them two have a start.
You won't be buying it, Kev. Come, we know that.
So you start. I've seen you've got yourself out to Vegas already. Right, gents, on that note, 3 weeks left of the season, 6 weeks till Old Trafford. So much to play for. An absolute pleasure, as ever, to have you guys in the studio. Stay with us on the Sportsman Rugby League right up until the end of this season. Anything could happen, but we will be here every Wednesday night at 6 o'clock. We'll see you next week.